My name is Jay Sugarman, and I want to welcome you to Innovation Showcase. The main purpose of this ongoing series is to inform viewers about exciting innovations, creative individuals across the fields of business, science, technology, education, and the arts. Today, via Zoom, we're fortunate to have as our guest Archy LaSalle. Archie is a highly accomplished fine art photographer, editor, educator, and he's here today to share with us some of his outstanding work, as well as inform us about the noteworthy initiative he founded entitled Where Are All the Black People At?, which is a grassroots organization whose mission is to bring attention to and help art institutions rectify past injustices of underrepresenting Black and Brown artists in their permanent collections. Let's start by meeting Archy. Welcome, Archy. So delighted you're able to be here again.
Thank you. Thank you. It's an honor to be here, and I look forward to our conversation. Well, I'm in Tucson. You're back in the Boston area, so it's still morning for us here. And in fact, it was 26 degrees here this morning and 29 in Boston. Unbelievable. But
terrific. Okay, wonderful. And thank goodness for Zoom to be able to do this. Really
yes.
fortunate. Before we enjoy some of your work and highlights, I think it would be of interest if you'd share a little bit about your background first, which is quite fascinating.
Be more than happy to. I was born in Mobile, Alabama, and I came to Boston the day I graduated from high school in 1966. And so I've been in Boston and using Boston as a base since 1966. And I've traveled the world for the past 40 years.
And
Yes.
before we come up to the present, you've provided us with a wonderful selection of images of your past family history. Would you highlight some of these individuals?
Yes, this is a photograph of the Dixon clan, as we call them. Back in the day, down in the Gulf Coast, they considered this group of people, they call them Negro, Indians, and Europeans. That's how they would address our family in a formal setting. But what I have here is really, it's 5 generations of family. Some you will see later. The woman on the far left is my grandmother's mother. That is Hattie Dixon, and which is my great grandmother. So you see all of the families, and you see there is Danny Dixon, Dan Dixon, which is the oldest member, and that would be my great grandfather. And you see all of the clan on the far right. That is his daughter and his son, a daughter-in-law and son as well. And the people standing in the back row, those are the indigenous people that are part of the family. And the woman that's second from the right is, her name is Lucy White, and she would be my great grandmother. And so those are all of the kids. And what I like about this particular photograph is what you see is a small child in this, as well as a pet, an animal. So these people had to be pretty well off, I think, because from their dress, and I'm sure they had on their Sunday best. And this photograph was taken in 1888. It was like 62 years after photography was invented, which I find really quite astounding. And also it was like 25 years after slavery, supposedly slavery. I don't consider myself ever to have been a slave. I was enslaved. My family was enslaved, some of them. And so that's sort of an overall background of this particular group of people, but I am so thrilled to have this. And I'm trying to get the original copy, and that's one of the reasons why I'm here in Tucson, Arizona as well. And one of the
Ah,
projects that I'll be working on is photographing a lot of the indigenous people, and as
interesting,
well as the Black and
interesting.
brown
Well,
people.
we're going to highlight a few other people in your
Mm,
background, and then we definitely want to move on to some of your work. But who are
yes,
just a few words about these two
yes.
individuals?
This is Charlie and Hattie. This is on their wedding day, and it was taken in 1912, and it cost my grandfather $1.50. He made $1 a week. So it
Wow.
was pretty expensive during that time. And what Charlie did, he was a very frugal guy. He had 8 children, and what he would do with that dollar a week, he would save 25 cents every week. And he had 8 children, as I said.
Hmm.
And at the end of 4 weeks, he would buy an acre of land, and he was able to acquire 200 acres of land. My grandmother on that side of the family, they didn't believe in owning land.
Hmm.
She's part of the indigenous group, and she's mixed with African and European and indigenous cultures as well. So that's that group.
Fascinating, fascinating. And this gentleman.
This is on my mother's side of the family. I don't have any pictures of my grandparents on my mom's side, but this is my grandfather's cousin, who was from Ireland as well. And his name is Eugene Johnny Poole. And so the next photograph is a photograph of his father, and this is Stephen Poole. And so this is my grandfather's, I guess it would be his cousin. And so I was really glad to run across these particular photographs because a family through Ancestry contacted me and says, "Oh, I think we're related." And here's this huge
Hmm.
guy sitting in a chair holding, I thought was a dog, but as I looked closer, it was a rabbit. And so I says, I got to find out who these people are. And come to find out, they are my, I guess, third cousins. And so
Ah,
it was really, really fascinating to run across them and be introduced to them. And they sent me these particular photographs.
nice. And through this next one, I think we get some of your initial interest in photography.
Well, I don't think people called them selfies back in the day, but for me, this was my first selfie, 1953. As I have said on many occasions to many people, this is the very first photograph I ever took. And I was so proud of this particular photograph. A couple of things happened. I got my training wheels off my bicycle and I took my first photograph. And I was just so thrilled with the art of photography. This was taken with a Polaroid lens camera, which you had to rub some sort of a solution on it to keep it from fading. I guess it was sort of a fixer uh,
Hmm.
type of image. And so I set it up. My uncle set the camera up for me. And then I positioned myself and pushed down on a long cable release, and it came out in seconds. It was just amazing, and I was really thrilled. And I still have the photograph, as I said often. It sits by my bed every night I go to sleep. Thank
Oh,
you.
fabulous, fabulous. Which photographers do you enjoy or have influenced you over the years?
Well, there is many that I enjoy looking at. One of the images that I truly love is Edward Steichen Flatiron Building. I just find that particular photograph is one that um, you can tell is a photograph of his own. It's not like he's photographing something famous. It's more about capturing uh, what's in front of him, but showing it in a really personal way. I mean, you see the person driving the horse and buggy, and you see the branches in the foreground, and a lot of things like that. You can see in my work, it's like looking at the edges. It's all about the edges and the form that's within those edges that I find really fascinating. And in fact, I'm here in Tucson, but I'm not here to photograph Tucson. Wherever I go in the world, I go, even if I'm in my backyard, I'm photographing what I see and what I respond to, you know. And so if you look on Facebook, LinkedIn, or Instagram, you'll see some of the work that I've posted here from Tucson that I've taken.
Nice,
And
nice.
as far as other photographers, I would say Gordon Parks. And in fact, in 1955, 56, when Gordon Parks was down in Mobile, Alabama, photographing, I actually looked in some of the photographs. He has a picture of my aunt's house. And I was just really fascinated by, wow, I have that close of a connection with Gordon Parks. I've seen him lecture many times and all. And there are other people, but as far as photographers, but the things that the people that really influenced me would be people like Toni Morrison, Muhammad Ali, Josephine Baker, to name a few. And then there is Hubert Baker, my 7th grade art teacher, who really taught me a lot. And I'm really pleased and honored to have had him as a teacher, as an educator of mine as well.
Well, I know you've had an incredible influence on many, many students over the years. Your work as an educator, Cambridge Ridge and Latin and other places. And maybe as we continue our conversation, we'll hear a few more words about that. But we're going to move on to a wonderful example of what you mentioned, photographing sort of where you are. And a project that received a lot of recognition is this one you did some years ago about MBTA and the Orange Line Southwest Corridor subway system. Would you share a few words about this, please, as we enjoy some of the photographs?
Sure. This particular project really was a 1-month project when I was at Mass College of Art. You had to pick a project to go out and do. And so I said, I lived in the South End there, and I said, I'll just go out and photograph the Orange Line. This project turned into 10 years of working pretty much nonstop. And so I had graduated many years, before I finished this particular project. But what was important, I used to take my students out, and this particular photograph was taken in 1982, but I would take my students out. I was teaching at the Jeremiah Burke at the time. I was, I guess, a long-term substitute teacher. The teacher that was there was pregnant, and so they called and asked would I finish the year out, and so that's what I did. So I took all of these students out and had them photograph their neighborhoods. And some of the students are like, I can't believe they're like 59 years old now. It is unbelievable. So when I look back, and they just enjoyed being outside and running around, but many of them did take photographs and go back and process them. But I was really, after I took this particular photograph, I just said, this is a project that's worth documenting. I thought of Eugene Archy, how he photographed old Paris and places like that. I thought of Gordon Parks, how he worked. I thought of Helen Levitt, how she would work. And then I started thinking about people like James Baldwin, how he would write a sentence, or Toni Morrison. I started getting all of these sort of muse from all of these wonderful people, from Bill Evans to Stan Getz to the Duke, you name it. And so I was just fascinated by creativity, just how you can go out and make a particular photograph. I wasn't making them necessarily to sell, to have a book published or anything like that, which I would love to have a book published at some point of this particular body of work, because not only did I photograph all of the subway stations, I also photographed the people in the neighborhood as well. This is what I call the money stop, or the money line. This is the new Orange Line Back Bay Station, and the station that runs parallel to Back Bay Station is the one that you showed before. That was Dover Station, and which is no longer there. And so they moved the Orange Line 4 blocks north from where it used to run on Washington Street. And so it would run more or less between, I would say, Tremont Street and Huntington Ave. So that's one of the newer station, and the other one is the old station. I love how, you see the new stations and the old stations, the juxtaposition of those particular stations, but it's really about the edges. If you go back to the other one for a quick second, and if you notice, just look at this composition at the bottom, how it's really symmetry, and at the top, and you see the two stairwells going up, and you see the middle. I just love looking and playing those geometric games when I'm out photographing. I'm looking, I'm taking my time. I'm not working for anybody. I don't consider this work at all. And if I was, I would be more like Walker Evans. Whatever I shoot it for myself, you
Yeah.
know.
Oh, really appreciate hearing your craftsmanship as we enjoy the photograph. And these next few, we're going to take
Uh,
us in and around the neighborhood.
yes, this was across the street from my studio, and I would go out and I would see these kids. I call it Tremont Street cart shopping. I mean, it was just so much fun. And again, these kids here now are well into their 50s, early 60s, you know, and it was just so nice to see them. And they would always say, "Hey, picture man, come take my picture, come take my." And I knew everybody from basically Chinatown to Forest Hill and all of the neighborhoods in between, you know, and people really, they had a certain appreciation of what I was doing, and I was definitely appreciative of what they was giving me. And this particular photograph here, it's like sidewalk basketball.
Mhm.
Again, I'm watching the game, I'm watching them interact with them, but I just love the position where you see on the lower right-hand side, the kid sitting on the curb there, and you see the shadow of someone on the
Yeah.
lower left. And so, and this is all changed now. Gentrification has come through, and if you walk down this neighborhood, through this neighborhood, you wouldn't even recognize it if you were there before this photograph was taken or shortly after. It's completely changed,
Mm.
really has.
There's
And
a life we've seen.
this particular photograph here is the and near what used to be Dudley Station, but this is now this was the West Indian Festival, and the West Indian Festival used to go through there. Now it's Nubian Square, and
Mm.
so this particular festival would happen every summer in August, and I was really thrilled just to see all of the music. They had like a Puerto Rican festival, they had the West Indian festival, and they had the St. Paul Street Fair. All of these things was happening in and around the city, and I thought it was really important to document these particular photographs. Some of these photographs are in the Boston Historical Society, I mean the Massachusetts Historical Society and Historical New England. And so I was really pleased to have them purchase some of these photographs here
Nice.
recently, even though I went to them over 20 some years ago, trying to say, hey, I think you should have this, you know? And so they could have got them at a much lesser price, of course.
Oh,
But
well,
I'm glad to have them in their permanent collection, which is
most
really
definitely, most definitely.
important.
And one last one we want to share and hear about is this one, please.
This particular photograph here is on Tremont Street, and you notice all of the signs in the background. It talks about furniture, it talks about real estate, mortgages, all of these. There was a little ma and pa store there. You see the guy in the middle. And so I know all of these people. Some of them have passed on, but all of these people we were like family in the neighborhood. And this was more of the I would say Hispanic section of Tremont Street. And the thing about all of these photographs, when you walk down Tremont Street or walk through the South End, you barely see a Black person, a brown person.
Hmm.
It is really just this gentrification is, I guess, it's a double-edged sword. I mean,
Exactly.
places get fixed up, but people get displaced as well.
Most definitely.
Yeah.
Want to move on to very important project you've gotten off the ground and continue to be very involved with, called Where Are All the Black People At? Please give us some background and inspiration for this important endeavor.
Hmm. Well, this really started back in 1978 when I was at Mass College of Art. And I would notice that gallery owners and collectors would come to the school, and they would have people that they would invite to their stable, I guess, or they would like to represent them. And
Mm,
that was, at that particular time, I couldn't think of anybody that was Black or brown that got invited to join a particular gallery.
mhm,
And I knew of a lots of artists who was just basically overlooked, as well as artists, my senior, like Milton Durr, who taught at the museum school for
mm,
30 years, and they don't have Milton Durr's paintings in the Museum of Fine Arts.
mm,
And so then I start thinking and start inquiring, and one thing led to another, and finally I just got really just frustrated. And I started the group and the organization, Where Are All the Black People At? And especially when I was teaching at Cambridge Ranger Latin School, which I was the first non-white art teacher to ever teach there,
mm.
which I found was amazing. The school itself is the second oldest public high school in the country. It was founded in 1648. I was born in 1948,
Mm.
so 300 years later. And
Gee.
so I
Wow.
started thinking about this. And so that's when I sort of founded the group. And what we do is we approach museums, we approach galleries and collectors, and to get them to inquire Black and brown artists' work. This particular image here is one of Roy Lichtenstein,
Mm,
and Roy sort of ripped off, I guess, who was it, Hess? I think Russ Heights. And so with the fighter jet, and
mhm.
so I'm using his artwork to draw attention to the lack of representation of Black and brown artists. 1.2%
Wow.
of all of the art in the 18 top museums in the country. At the time when I did this, Black and brown people, Black people represent 1.2%, which is really appalling when you think about it. And the thing about this, Jay, is when you approach a lot of the museums and collectors and all, they don't really want to talk about this. Now, some do, but one of the things that I've found in the past, when people, friends, are the ones who are guilty of this, and I use the word guilty because they are denying an entire society not being able to see the work of others that's not like themselves.
Mhm,
And when we meet with organizations like this, I sort of insist that they own up to the things that they have either been a part of, things that they did, or the things that they know that their friends have done. Because what they're trying to do is rewrite history like this never happened. We
mm,
see this in our schools across the country. You cannot erase history. You may lose your mind, but you cannot lose history, okay? And so this is not something to make people feel guilty or ashamed about. This is what happened. And I think of all of the young kids, whether they are Black and brown or white or everywhere in between, how they have been denied. Society has been denied the lack of representation. This is a particular project called the Bus Stop uh, Project. It's where 9 artists took their artwork to the street. And this is, the bus shelters that people
mhm,
sort of stand on and wait for the public buses and public transportation. Well, these particular artists, we went out and we was given permission to use the bus stations throughout Dorchester and Roxbury. And so we put up our own work. And the thing about this particular work is we all do different types of work. And a lot of the people would like to see Black and brown people either fists in the air, burning buildings, et cetera, downtrodden. And when all Black people aren't like that, it's like we're just like any other culture. There's good, bad, and indifference in all walks of
mhm.
life. And so we want to highlight all of that. And I'll get back to some of that later on at the PBD Essex Museum. But it was important to highlight this particular group of artists. And to the left of that, it's like one of Roy Lichtenstein's pop art type pieces. And so we use a lot of things like that. We put up posters around the city, where are all the Black people at? And the other one that says we're in plain sight, which we are. And so those
Most
are some of the things that activism. And in fact, there was a person on LinkedIn wrote me a note and says, oh, you're just inspiring hate and so forth. Dr. King would not appreciate what you're doing. And I'm thinking, what are you
I
talking
know.
about? You
You know,
know,
Archie, for the sake of time, which is only a couple minutes left, please share what you had in mind briefly, unfortunately, about the Peabody Essex Museum.
oh, yes, they have. Oh, the show came down on December 31st. It was called As We Rise, and it was a collection of work by Dr. Kenneth Montague. And it was an amazing exhibition. It showed Black and brown people in all walks of life, just really, really positive. And Stephanie Tong did an amazing job and working with Kenneth and working with Aperture Magazine to put this particular show together. And this particular show was only in the US, was it only in Salem. That was the only exhibition, and the rest are out of the country. But what another thing that Stephanie and the PBD Essex Museum did, they work with high school students, and I was able to work with a couple of workshops with these particular students, incredible students, Black and brown students, and one white student as well. But to see the young people come together and work together, I mean, we could learn something. Us that are older could learn something. And they were honest. And what I loved about this particular project and the workshop that we did, it was on public speaking. It was teaching a lot of the young folks how to talk about art, how to talk about their own personal life, and do it in a way that that highlights them, that shows their interest, shows their intelligence. And in the end of the workshop, I think they had it for 8 weeks. I was part of two. They did an overall presentation. And what they did is they met with the board of directors of the PBD Essex, and they told them what they thought of the program, what they thought of the museum. They gave ideas and suggestions. I went to this, and to see these young people present, it was 8 of them. It was unbelievable. I felt like I was in a doctoral dissertation or something. They were
Terrific,
so together on this, and I
terrific,
really,
terrific.
really enjoyed it.
Well,
You know,
Archie, there's so much more we could find out about your career and the various projects like the couple you've highlighted you're involved with, but unfortunately, we're going to have to wrap it up for today. We'll have contact information for you in the credits. And once
okay.
again, just thank you so much for joining us. Fascinating to hear more about your personal background, your work as a photographer, and the important initiatives you've been involved with and continue success with all
Wow.
endeavors.
Well, thank you, Jay. Thank you, Jay. And thank you, Catherine. Even though I can't see you, I know you're behind the scenes. Thanks a
Also,
lot. I really appreciate it.
our pleasure. Also want to thank those of you watching for joining us and hope you'll be able to tune in next time.